Now, Mary, you've been recording her story. Do you want to share anything?
Well, Natalie, when she knew she had this pancreas cancer, said she wanted to write her life story, and I offered to effectively be her ghost writer because something seemed to be stopping her from writing it. But she was in hospital for a long time and didn't want to talk about it in hospital, and then she came home and she wasn't well and so on. So in the end, we only ever actually had 2 long telephone sessions when she told me what she got round to telling me in that session about her life story, and I wrote that all down and then restructured it a bit into a story in the first person, and I only got to read it back to her about a week ago, because even when she was home there were people visiting or she was sleeping, or we just didn't manage to make times. So when I did read it back to her, I only read the first half because she wasn't well enough to cope with too much, and she seemed okay about what I'd written, and we were going to do the second half and add more detail in another call, and that isn't going to happen now. But when I did read it back to her, the first half that I read back to her, we got to where she and Alphonse met, and she said a little bit more about that, which is what Louise has just told you. It was obviously very significant for her that the office is now where she and Alphonse met. That felt to her like something that was supposed to happen, part of the way
bigger purpose
out. And there's something she did want to say. She wanted her children and grandchildren to know that she told me quite a lot about her grandmother, who was an Irish girl in Melbourne.
Wow.
And the grandfather was, I haven't got it in front of me, I'll send you what I've written, it's a draft. But the grandfather was an Indonesian here as a soldier, I think. And they met, and back then it was a terrible thing. Her parents would never have let their lovely daughter, Anglo-Irish daughter, marry an Indonesian. So the daughter said to her boyfriend, "You better get me pregnant." And she got pregnant and then told her mother. And it was even more horrific for the mother to have her daughter pregnant and not married. So she said, "Well, you'd better get married."
She was as cunning as Natalie.
So that's her grandmother, Shirley. And then once they got married, they went, I think they might have had the baby, and then went back. The soldier had to go back to Indonesia, so she went back with him, which is how, so that was Natalie's mother that was born in those circumstances, Corrie. And that's how Corrie ended up growing up in Indonesia, an only child. But that marriage didn't last. And that person, the Irish Shirley, had 2 more marriages and then a boyfriend. And so Corrie grew up with this sort of situation and met her husband, who was from Malaccas, and married him. And Natalie was one of 6, was it? 8 children, a large number.
Yeah.
And I never did get the names of all the children, but someone in the family will know. And then at some point when that marriage didn't last either, and at some point her mother, with the kids, including Natalie, came to move to Melbourne when she was about 11. And that's because this Irish grandmother, Shirley, I think that's why, was still in Melbourne. So she's always had this sort of connection between Indonesia and Melbourne. But then that Corrie, her mother, married again. And Natalie talked a bit in her story about the horrors of that. And she ended up becoming a bit of a street girl and getting into trouble with police. And she didn't get to tell me much detail, but she seems to want that to be in her written story.
This was the grandmother. The grandmother.
No, this is Natalie herself. This is one of Natalie's. once her mother married the man from Malaccas and so Natalie grew up in Indonesia until she was 11.
Mm.
She talked a bit about school life there. And then when she was 11, her mother moved to Melbourne again, because that's where the Irish grandmother was still living. But things didn't go well with the stepfather, and she got into trouble and then married Alphonse. And so, and at some point, which she didn't get around to telling me how it happened, but she basically said when she realised that Jesus loves her, that's what saved her. That's how she can be. Because I said to her, you know, after all these things you've told me, how can you be this wonderful, generous, loving person? And she just said it's because she knows Jesus loves her. And she wants everyone else to know that too. And just because she has hurt, it sounds like she had a terrible teenage years and suffered a lot, and never ever wants anyone else to suffer. So she's just got this incredible, generous heart of no one should be hurt, and I'm going to make sure no one ever gets hurt. And she really, really wanted her children and grandchildren way after she's died to know that story. So it's still a bit of a challenge for me to try and, I've got her words that she said, but to sort of just put it together in a way that honours her in the way she wanted. She also, in those two interviews, talked about Alphonse's mother and how she's the woman who's been a mother to Natalie. She's still alive. She's in her 80s, I think, in West Papua, and her greatest wish was to live long. Like Alphonse was shocked by the fact she might die, and was being loving and caring for her since she's been home from hospital, and she's really grateful for that. And Alphonse wanted another 15 years with her, and he wants to take her back to West Papua and have time again with his mother. And she has the greatest admiration for Alphonse's mother, and so wanted to live long enough to go back and just be held in her arms. She said that's what she wants, just to be embraced. She also talked about how Alphonse's mother wasn't able to come to Christine's wedding, their first daughter, because that was not long, about a year after the 43 Papuans had come to Australia. And there were about 22 West Papuans who all wanted to come to Christine's wedding. And they all applied for visas, and so immigration got suspicious and wouldn't let any of them come. But by the time of her son's wedding, that was many years later, some of them were able to come, including Alphonse's mother. So she spoke very, very warmly of the meaning in her life of Alphonse's mum. And she said it was through being with Alphonse, of course, that she embraced the West Papuan cause, and was grateful for that. She just spoke of being very grateful for the life she's had in spite of suffering in her teenage years, and how she's got 3 beautiful children and grandchildren and feels loved. Yeah.
Robert, when we were at Alphonse's brother's house, was the mother there too?
Yes, we visited Alphonse's mother's house. She's the one who gave you the plate.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. Yes.
She came to my place for dinner because I invited at one stage a group of them for dinner, and the mother came here, I remember. So
would that have been at the time of the son's wedding? Because that's when she did come.
Maybe it was someone else's mother. I thought it was Alphonse's mother. When would the son's wedding have been?
Oh, I have to go and look at my...
Oh, don't worry.
Sorry.
Just trying to... Dates are a funny thing, aren't they?
Mm.
Probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah, it would have been her then that came.
Yeah.
Because I remember she went and sat in the garden for quite a while and had a time to meditate.
because she's a very, very strict seventh, I think.
Seventh-day Adventist, that's right.
So often, if we were with her on a Saturday, she would leave and go and sit in her room or sit somewhere like she did with the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she'd kind of say hello and then go off. She was very strict.
I know.
Click for Zoom.
Right.
So Louise, where is that dish now that I gave you?
Well, it's been passed on, I think, to the next person. We never keep things for that long. But I'll.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh gosh, yes, yes.
Linda sent it to us.
Right.
Now, where's that, I wonder?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
That's a good one.
That's
You've
probably,
been in a lot of kitchens, so.
Yes.
yes. Is that Brunswick Hall?
That's the Joy of Freedom launch, CD launch.
Oh, okay.
We catered for 100 people, 'cause that's what we were told. And I think 250 people were there, and they wanted second, third, fourth. And so in the midst of serving food, Alphonse was cooking more food, and Natalie was saying to me, put less on their plate. Give them more of the noodles, more of the rice. And because we just didn't have enough food. We had to go out and get more. But that's good experience with them.
You were pretty hands-on at those events, weren't you, Linda, in the kitchen?
Yes, well, we all sort of thought we'll be able to cook and then go and enjoy the the bands playing, but it was just so full on in the kitchen that night. We were all stuck there pretty much. But so it was good to have that experience.
Yeah, it was always like that, like full on, and then you're totally exhausted. I don't think Natalie ever knew one thing that went on in those open days. Even though she was sort of quite interested, she'd say a couple of days later, "What are you talking about?" There was just no time. It's, I think, unless you've done catering, which I haven't, you don't really appreciate how much preparation. How much you just get no time for anything else.
Yeah. Well, as Mary has said, her Christian commitment was very important to Natalie, and in that way, she became a very spiritual person. And that spirituality showed itself in very practical ways. I mean, you never felt it was forced upon you, but it was always there as a shining example of what it meant to be a Christian and to follow, as she said, to follow Jesus. So that is important, I think, to acknowledge that, and that's why she was so crucial in the sharing of the office as a time of prayer. And she was always the translator, and Babawan was the prayer. Babawan always did it in language, but in order to keep Babawan as part of the conversation, Natalie was the translator. So it was a very important role she played. And the relationship between Natalie and Babawan was very close. And Babawan and Yvonne have been there at Alphonse's house for the last couple of weeks or so, ever since the last lockdown, as part of the support for Natalie. So we need to acknowledge the beauty of that relationship, Babawan and Natalie and Yvonne, and the support that's given to Natalie in these final few weeks. So we acknowledge that.